Have you ever seen one of those familiar images? A line of creatures arranged from left to right, starting with a hunched-over ape, gradually standing more upright, until finally becoming a modern man confidently striding forward at the end of the line. That image is almost completely wrong. But here's the interesting part. Even if you remove it from your mind over the next few minutes, there's a good chance you'll accidentally build a new ladder, one that's subtler and harder to recognize. And I'm going to tear down that ladder too. Before we begin, one thing needs to be clear. The character you're about to meet is not an individual whose fossil scientists actually excavated and named. This is a thought experiment, constructed from what current paleontology allows us to infer about a population of primates that lived more than 6 million years ago in Africa, very close to the time when the lineage leading to humans and the lineage leading to modern chimpanzees split from their common ancestor. We'll call this imaginary individual Ara. Ara is very good at climbing trees. Strong arms, hands that grip branches firmly. But when Ara comes down to the ground, there are times when Ara stands up, 2 feet planted on the ground. Ara takes a few steps, then returns to the familiar way of moving, because staying upright on 2 legs for long is still awkward, slower, and more exhausting. Ara has no answer as to which way of moving is better. No one in Ara's population has that answer. This is exactly what makes this moment more interesting than a simple evolutionary transition. It is a moment of uncertainty, repeated thousands of times, by thousands of individuals, across thousands of generations, none of them knowing that they are in the middle of a process that will receive a name only much later. You might be imagining that somewhere, there must have been one clear moment. A specific individual, on a specific day, who officially crossed the line from ape to human. This is the first ladder, and the fossil evidence seems to reinforce it. In 2001, scientists in Chad discovered the skull of a species named Sahelanthropus chidensis, dating back approximately 6 to 7 million years. This creature had certain features consistent with the possibility of moving on 2 legs, although exactly how it moved remains a subject of debate among paleoanthropologists to this day. So far, so good. It still fits your original picture, a species beginning to stand upright earlier than you thought, but still moving along a straight path. Then came Lucy. In 1974, in Ethiopia, paleoanthropologist Donald Johansen discovered the remains of an Australopithecus afarensis individual who lived about 3.2 million years ago, famous for the unusually high proportion of her skeleton that was recovered compared with most other hominin fossils, although even that amounts to only about 40% of the skeleton. Lucy clearly walked upright on 2 legs. At this point, you're almost certain. Human evolution was a process of climbing trees, then gradually standing upright, then becoming the genus Homo, and finally becoming us. A smooth path, step by step, becoming more and more human. You've just removed the old ladder and accidentally built a new one. But in 2009, an international research team published a detailed analysis of the remains of Ardipithecus ramidus, nicknamed Ardi, dating back approximately 4.4 million years. That means Ardi lived more than 1 million years before Lucy. If your new ladder is correct, Ardi should have been less bipedal than Lucy, right? The farther back in time you go, the more ape-like everything should become. But the evidence is far more complicated than that. Ardi still retained significant adaptations for climbing. Her foot still had a divergent big toe, useful for gripping branches. But at the same time, Ardi's body also showed features associated with walking on 2 legs, not less advanced than Lucy along a straight line. Just different, with a different combination of traits suited to the particular environment and selective pressures Ardi's population faced. There is no straight line at all, whether a crude one or a more sophisticated one. There is a tree with many branches growing alongside one another, experimenting with different combinations of traits at the same time, without heading toward any predetermined destination. After that, many different species continued to appear. But instead of replacing one another in an orderly line, most of the time, they existed alongside one another. Hominins belonging to, or very closely related to, Homo erectus were among the earliest known groups to expand deep into Eurasia, with fossil evidence from Dmanisi, Georgia, dating back nearly 2 million years. In Europe, Neanderthals developed over hundreds of thousands of years. In Asia, Denisovans left traces of themselves through a fragment of finger bone found in a cave in Siberia in 2010. There were periods when at least 3 or 4 different human groups existed on Earth at the same time, with none of them being a direct, upgraded version of another. And Homo sapiens? For a long time, scientists believed that our species appeared around 200,000 years ago. In 2017, a research team led by Jean-Jacques Hublin published findings in Nature on fossils from Jebel Irhoud, Morocco, dating back approximately 315,000 years, plus or minus about 34,000 years. This discovery pushed back the known fossil evidence for the early stages of Homo sapiens. Notice how I just said that, the known fossil evidence. Not the moment our species appeared. Because if the point of this entire story is that there was never a sharp boundary between one species and another, then science itself cannot give you an exact birthday for an entire species. Every new fossil only pushes back what we know, not what actually happened. So what is really worth remembering? Not simply that evolution doesn't follow a straight line. That's only the surface of a much bigger truth, and this is what is actually worth taking with you after this video. Humans do not stand at the top of anything. We are not more evolved than chimpanzees by any absolute measure. Chimpanzees have also been evolving continuously for the past 6 million years, just in a different direction, suited to a different environment. And we certainly were not the goal that 6 million years of evolution was quietly trying to produce. No mutation appears for a purpose. There are only random variations continuously appearing in each generation, while the surrounding environment determines which traits help the individuals carrying them survive longer and reproduce more. No intention, no plan, no one trying to figure out how to create humans. That may sound like nothing more than an academic detail, but it actually changes the entire way you see your own place in nature. If evolution truly had a destination, and humans were that destination, then every other species around you, the dog lying at your feet, the crow perched outside your window, or the chimpanzee at the zoo, would simply be an unfinished version somewhere along the path leading to you. But the truth is exactly the opposite. That dog, that crow, and that chimpanzee have all gone through exactly the same amount of evolutionary time as you have, measured from the most distant common ancestor. They are not less evolved. They are simply solving a different survival problem with a different set of tools. We are just one surviving branch on a tree where most of the other branches, including Neanderthals, Denisovans, and many other lineages whose fossils we may never even have found, have ended forever. If you could place Ara next to a modern human, the difference would be enormous. But if you placed Ara next to Ara's parents, there would be almost no magical moment to see. There was no last ape. There was no first human who appeared one morning. There were only parents giving birth to children who were very much like themselves, generation after generation, hundreds of thousands of times, until those tiny differences, when viewed across millions of years, added up to an enormous difference. Ara, although only a thought experiment, represents a creature belonging to a lineage that millions of years later would lead to beings capable of telling the story of their own origins. Not because that was a predetermined destination, but simply because, among the countless branches that once existed, this is one of the very few that survived long enough to tell the story.